Alright guys, BLM here, back with a new video. In this video, I'll be reviewing Season 1 of The Circle, France. So yes, this is late. I did not have the time to watch this season when it originally came out. However, now a few months later, finally had the time to binge it. So here we go. And I've heard nothing but great things about The Circle France. And thankfully when I watched it here, I wasn't disappointed. I mean, I love The Circle France. I think it's the first season of The Circle that fully lived up to the potential that the show has always had as being the next great strategic reality TV game show. And this season easily has the most strategy of any season of The Circle so far. Has really great memorable characters, which I personally thought was missing from The Circle Brazil, while again having the strategy that was missing from something like The Circle US. Now there is a lot to talk about here, and like my other reviews, I'll be going through the season episode by episode. So let's start off with the premiere, where we get the same intro as the other seasons, but this time with the male announcer instead of a female announcer, which we've had for all the previous versions, and also not an announcer that's actually shown. Unlike those previous versions that have a host that eventually ends up being the host of the reunion at the end of the season, there wasn't one here. There was simply just no host, and it was just kind of weird. At the end of the day, it doesn't really affect the season that much. We do get the introduction to the players, starting with Romain, who I initially thought was kind of douchey in his intro video, but he obviously quickly turned that around. I think he's a really lovable character, a lot like Joey from The Circle US for me, where again, a lot of his just reactions to things are just really fun to watch. We see Alea and Cedric enter the game, and they get pretty average introductions. And the final person of that initial batch was Maxime, who comes in playing as his wife or girlfriend. It's kind of weird because I believe they keep on changing this throughout the season, but either way, he comes in playing as Valeria, and I found him fascinating. I mean, he reminded me of a really tall Napoleon, a really stoic and overly strategic player, and initially he became very entertaining to me because of that, but I do feel like he changes over the course of the season to be a much more dynamic character. We then get them creating their profiles. I think Maxim does a pretty good job at picking a pretty natural looking photo. Again, I think one of the biggest mistakes within The Circle for that initial profile picture is picking something that's too glamorous, and it makes people think that you're a catfish. So I think Maxim did a pretty good job there. I did find it strange that Cedric picked a photo with a puppy, but one that barely showed his face. I thought that would backfire on him, and it kind of eventually does, but it doesn't initially seem to have any real effect on him. We then get the rest of the players, starting off with Monique and Joe, who are two elderly friends. And that was just such a random relationship to have join The Circle. I mean, usually it's family members that play together, or a relationship, but here two just friends. It's just kind of weird, but they play as Joe's grandson Nicholas, and they did bring some humor to the season. I mean, they were so bad at the game, and it was just so funny to see them stumbling through it. Ness and Gary were next, and they seem fine based on their profiles. But then we get Lou, who once again is a model and wants people to not judge her, but then picks a modeling photo as her profile picture. And we literally get the same mistake on all three versions of the Netflix Circle seasons. It's really mind-blowing. But then we get the players seeing the other players' profiles, and we get some funny reactions here. I mean, Romain, again, obviously, it's just funny of him freaking out after seeing Cedric and Nicholas's profiles. We see Cedric thinking Valeria is an old man, and also thinking Lou is a catfish, as, again, why wouldn't you? I love Maxim's reaction to seeing her profile too, where he says she's either fake or clueless. But after this, we do get the first chat, and we get some fun moments from the Nicholas pair, where they struggle to even come up with the sentence, and responds to Valeria's post talking about how he'd love to be in the bath with her, which again led to some funny reactions. But after this chat, we do get the ratings, which is a bit later than the previous seasons. The previous seasons had ratings before the chat, and I kind of like it both ways. I think they both have their benefits. This one's probably more fair. It gives them more time to settle on their opinions, but I like the initial concept of the profile being the main decision maker behind the first boot. After this, we do get some private conversations between Cedric and Lou, and I feel like Lou played really passively here and never really gave a response of substance. I think that's a lot of the reason why, again, just people believe she was a catfish. We do see Alea and Valeria bond over Nice. We see Cedric and Ines flirting. We then get the ratings results where Nicholas comes in last, followed by Valeria and then Lou. So essentially all of the possible catfishes are at the bottom. We then get this weird cliffhanger before the third place result. And overall, this was a shorter premiere, but I think this was the strongest premiere of the Circle so far. Again, introducing us to a really fun batch of characters and having really solid pacing, which is usually my problem with the Circle in general. Now for episode 2, where we get the results, and we have Romain in third, and he obviously has a funny reaction, he always does. But then we have Alea and Cedric as the influencers, but interestingly, they didn't have to block someone right away. Instead, we got the icebreaker game after the results reveal, instead of before like it is on all the other seasons. But during this game, we also have Lou admitting to being a model, which I don't think is a particularly great look. I didn't think Cedric played this well either, with him reacting to the results in a really demeaning way. We did get a fun conversation between Nicholas and Alea afterwards, with Nicholas coming off as really desperate, and Alea does not take this conversation well and leaves. But somehow the Nicholas pair thinks that this conversation went well, which is just funny. But then we finally get to the blocking, and right away we just have Cedric playing really strategically, and he really reminded me of Antonio from the Circle US, where Antonio really dictated that first round of the Circle US, but then immediately gets taken out afterwards, has a massive downfall. And Cedric's arc throughout the season kind of remind me of that, not necessarily because he does actually survive a bit longer than Antonio did, but I think he does come off the same way in this initial round. But I did find it kind of strange that he didn't want to target Nicholas, as obviously Nicholas isn't a threat, but he does target Lou and Ines, the two people that he just got close to, which just seemed kind of weird. I mean, he took the time to build bonds with those two people just to want to target them, and that just seemed like a bad decision on my end. I think the thing that he seemed to forget about the Circle is that while you should be getting rid of threats when you can, you also have to think about how you're going to be rated in future rounds, because with Lou and Ines they're obviously more than likely going to rate him high moving forward. So by eliminating them, especially in this season in particular, with the strategy that later gets implemented by Team Winner, he would have been greatly benefited from keeping Lou around as someone that could propel him higher in the ratings. But unsurprisingly, Lou does end up getting blocked, and she does get to meet someone, and she meets Cedric, and she's really pissed. And I really wasn't expecting her to be so confrontational. But she starts off by denying him a hug, and then just goes off on him, and eventually just storms out of the room. I just found this really funny. I mean, it was a great exit from the game there. We do get her message the next day where Lou really calls out Cedric as being strategic, but doesn't mention him by name, leading to a lot of speculation on whether it was Cedric or Alea. And we do get a girls' chat later on in the episode where Alea is asked about this and gives a pretty poor response and tries to put the blame onto Cedric, but Ines just doesn't believe her. And we do end the episode with a new player arriving, but before moving on, we should talk about Lou, who made the exact same mistake as the first boots from the Circle US and the Circle Brazil. I mean, she used a model-esque photo as her profile picture, which automatically makes her come off as a catfish. I think Lou also played too passively, to where she would use really short answers in conversations that also made her look like a catfish. I mean, she was really feisty on her way out, which was pretty fun to watch, but I do think she came off as a bit indignant over people judging her for her looks when, again, she actively played poorly to make them think that. But now for episode 3, where I did find it a bit weaker than the previous two. I think this is probably actually the weakest episode of the entire season. And we start off with Rudy entering the game, who is catfishing as Gabriel, a single father, and he gets off to a decent start, getting along with most of the people in the group. He does later create a guys group that seems to go well, though it does look like Cedric feels threatened by him overall. We got the Cinemojis game, and this was mainly fun because the Nicholas duo was doing so poorly at it, where they didn't know what Harry Potter or 50 Shades of Grey were, but somehow knew what the Troops of Saint-Tropez was, which I've never heard of. But this makes it clear to everybody that Nicholas is much older than he's pretending to be. We then get a Cedric and Gary conversation where Cedric continues to throw Alea under the bus. We get the ratings, and predictably, we get some strategic ratings from Cedric, Gary, and Ines. That eventually lands Alea in last place. But we do also end up with Valeria as one of the influencers with Ines, which does end up saving Alea from being eliminated here. But the episode does end with them going to make the decision. And again, for me, I did find this episode pretty dry overall. Now for episode 4, which starts off with the blocking, and we have Ines really wanting to block Alea, but obviously Valeria is really adamant about keeping her, so they agree to block Nicholas. And let's talk about Nicholas. Nicholas, that duo there was fantastic TV. They had absolutely no clue what was going on. They had no clue what they were doing, and possibly played the game worse than anyone in the history of the show. But it was a fun train wreck to watch, and they do get to meet someone, and that person ends up being Romain, and he has a really funny reaction to seeing the two of them. And it was interesting to see them have a pretty correct read on Cedric being a really strategic player. And obviously Romain seems to take this by heart, and obviously this influences how the game plays out moving forward. After this, we do get an alliance talk between Cedric's alliance, with them still being against Alea, with Ines in particular being very anti-Alea. We do have the creation of hashtag team winner with Alea and Romain, who did actually build their alliance in the previous episode, but here's where they officially come together to target Cedric. We also have an alliance with Gabriel and Ines, and later on we see an alliance between Romain and Valeria as well. We do get the Nicholas reveal, which was pretty fun. We get new profile pictures with Gary picking one with his ass showing, which I found pretty funny. Cedric is really threatened by Romain's picture of him showing himself to be like a goofball, and then out of nowhere we just get a player join the circle, and like it just really felt random. But we're introduced to Nalia here through the other players seeing her profile, and this made it very clear to me that this was going to be a catfish. And we do get the reveal that she is really a pair of twins, Edmundo and Zhao. And we get a cliffhanger after they have to pick someone to go on a date with. But also strangely, we get a next time on segment showing the twins just being crazy and calling people out. And this seemed really weird for a Netflix show to do, especially because this season was dropped all on one day. It wasn't like the Circle Brazil or the Circle US where they had like a 1 week gap in between episodes. This one was released all in one day, so I don't know if it was like originally planned to be like those other formats, but then they changed their mind, or they just had a weird promo for the twins for some reason. But overall, that was just kind of weird. But now for episode 5, where we get Nalia picking Romain as her date, and we get Romain telling her of his alliance and the truth about Cedric being his target. We get Maxime or Valeria being jealous of Nalia being with Romain, which is just kind of weird. I mean, they are in this kind of weird showmance on this season, which does lead to some fun moments throughout the season, but I feel like this is the point where I think it's pretty clear that Maxime like really falls into the character of Valeria, where he really starts to act as if he's actually in love with Romain, and as if he's actually, again, this character that he's built. We then get the status updates where Valeria and Ines continue their feud, and Cedric's game starts to crumble, where it seems like Gabriel turns against him here, and this ends up leading to the Tag the Player game. And this brings a lot of drama. It ends up completely blowing up Cedric's game in the process. We get a question about pick the player that made you hot or whatever. I mean, essentially the person that you're most attracted to. And Cedric picks Romain, and this causes Nalia to call him out and talk about their conversation earlier, where Cedric obviously talked negatively about Romain, so that's bad for him there. But then we also get the question of who's the biggest hypocrite. We have the obvious of Ines putting Alea and Cedric putting Romain, but everyone else puts Cedric, even Gary, and that was a massive blow to his game. Immediately after this, we do get Ines trying to patch things up between the two, and we do have Cedric trying to talk to Romain, but Romain just leaves the chat, which is funny, but I also think it's pretty poor gameplay on his end, and also seemed pretty petty on his part. But we do get a cliffhanger on the announcement that the rules are going to change for this round of the rankings. Now for episode 6, which starts off with the rules reveal that there will be no influencers this round, and only the bottom 2 will be at risk, with them being voted out by the group. And this is something that they've done in previous versions, but we get a really strategic ratings here, with the two alliances essentially going after each other. Though I was surprised at a couple things. I was surprised at Ines rating Gabriel first, which I think it becomes pretty clear that Gabriel was really working the women as it seems like he has a really good relationship with Ness and a really good relationship with Alea that wasn't really shown too much on the show. Also, we have Gabriel rating Cedric last, making it pretty clear where this elimination was going, but we did get the results, and I was surprised that Gary was as low as he was, but Alea and Cedric being at the bottom was inevitable. Though it would have been pretty fun for it to be down to Romain and Cedric instead, but we do get the reveal that the bottom two will get to meet in person in the lounge, and that led to some fun moments, with Cedric admitting that he was the one that Lou visited and that he was the one that was throwing Alea under the bus the entire time to Ines, and it was also just funny to see them as the bottom two, considering they labeled themselves the king and queen at the beginning of the season. But it's clear that it's going to be a 2-2 vote here with Gabriel as the swing, and they really stretched this out, but it was really obvious Gabriel was voting out Cedric, considering he put Cedric last in his rankings. So Cedric ends up going home, and let's talk about Cedric. I mean, Cedric was a great character this season. He played the game really hard. I just think he played it too blatantly hard, as it really just made him a target in the mid-game here. He seemed to really mismanage Gabriel. That caused him and his alliance to lose out on this vote, and really this is what causes Team Winner to eventually steamroll the season. Again, his arc did remind me of Antonio from the Circle US, but Cedric did hold control for longer than Antonio did, and I personally think had probably bigger moments throughout the season than he did. As for me, Cedric was a massive highlight of this first half of the season. From this point forward, it's really Team Winner just steamrolling the rest of the way through. After this, we do get your typical segments of like status updates and Cedric's farewell video, where he does reveal that Lou visited him. That does cause Gary and Ines to feel manipulated by him. This does lead to Alea and Ines reconciling later on in the episode. We have Cedric throwing Gabriel under the bus before he leaves as well. We do get more of the Valeria and Romain showmans, which again is just kind of weird. As again, like Valeria is like really leading him on. I mean, unlike the showmans from season 1 of the UK that does end up leading all the way to the end, like that one was more of a one-sided relationship, while this one really goes both ways. And I feel like the editing here is also really strange, where it really feels like they're editing it as if it is a real showmance, but obviously we know it isn't. But this is also the episode where they formally form Team Winner. Before it was just Alea and Romain, now they add in Valeria. And again, this group dominates from this point forward. But we do also have a new player arriving in Paolo, who looked like a real version of Nicholas, and we get this really strange segment of everyone having to write him a welcome card, where we had Romain trying to recruit him for Team Winner, and we had Valeria and Alea worrying about their handwriting, obviously because they were a catfish, and we end on the cliffhanger that Gabriel suspects Alea of being a catfish, but again, who really cares? Now for episode 7, where we continue from the cliffhanger, where Gabriel calls out Alea. No, again, doesn't affect anything. We then get Paolo having the ability to send a present to any player, and it was really funny to see him being so indecisive on pretty much everything about this decision, from like what gift to give to what person to give it to. But he does end up picking probably the better strategic move for himself, and that is to pick Romain. And instantly Romain is on his side, wants him to join Team Winner, but the conversation that they have kind of turns Paolo off, as Paolo says that he feels manipulated by this. And I will say, I think Romain plays this pretty terribly. And I think he plays, to be honest, this entire episode pretty terribly. Where he does later on also reveal Team Winner in the group chat with everybody. Though it does look like Alea takes more of the heat in this by angrily reacting to that. But still, this makes it clear that they have a 3-person alliance, and for that to be out in the open with so many players still left isn't great, though it does actually end up working out for him because Gary decides to flip. We do see Valeria and Romain creating a plan to bring Gary in on Team Winner after him asking to join them in the public chat, and Romain has a conversation with him, and Gary flips right away, which throws Romain off and makes him a target instead. But to be honest, I don't entirely get why. Again, I feel like this is something that they're misunderstanding about the circle, is that, yeah, Gary can flip on you or whatnot, but why take out Gary, someone who might possibly side with you, over someone like Ines, who is someone that's never going to side with you, or even Nalea, or someone in that nature, someone that you know is not on your side over someone that might be on your side. And it's also just weird for them too, because they're not even in the majority yet. For them to bring Gary in just to cut him was just the complete wrong game decision in my opinion, but again, it does work out for him. And I will say that this is probably the most strategic maneuvering we've seen on the circle up to this point. There's never been an alliance in the circle as solid as Team Winner here, and for them to play this hard as a group is unprecedented. But then we get the ratings with some surprising results, like Gary putting Alea in first and Romain putting Gary in last. But we get the results that show that Valeria takes a really big drop, with somehow Alea jumping all the way back up to first with Ines as the other influencer. But through that, the entirety of Team Winner is safe, obviously, as Alea is influencer, and she's never going to let any member of Team Winner go home, which obviously shows the strength of an alliance within the game of the circle. But the episode ends with Alea starting to throw Gary under a bus by revealing that Gary has flipped on Ines. Now for episode 8, where we get Alea completely flipping Ines against Gary, and while I don't think it was the right move to get rid of him for Team Winner, it was impressive how they were able to pull it off here. But before the blocking, we do get some fun from the at-risk chat, where Romain, for no reason, decides to cause chaos by claiming that there's an imposter in the game. And during this, even Maxim knows that this is a terrible strategic move for them to be making, as this would have really backfired on them if Gary didn't end up being the boot here. But Gary does end up being blocked anyway, and I thought Gary was fine on the season. I think out of the original cast, he was probably the one I liked the least. Not that he was necessarily bad casting by any means, but I just didn't connect to him as much as the other members of the cast. And I also feel like he didn't have any big moments throughout the entire season. He was kind of a more passive player in the game. And outside of the way that he was booted, I don't find him that memorable. But again, that exit was really fantastic. But he does obviously get to meet someone, and he does meet Ines. And Gary tells her his side of the story, which I do think he made himself look better than what it was in reality. But either way, he gets Ines to target Romain, and through his farewell message, he tells everybody that Ines is targeting Romain, which I think really shows his lack of foresight in the game. But after this, we do have Ines trying to rebound from that by pulling in Alea on her plan to target Romain, and later they get Paolo on board as well. So while it doesn't work out, it is nice to see a rebellion against Team Winner here. But we do also see the final new player join the game in Virginie, who is pretending to be a gynecologist and actually has pictures of herself in like doctor's clothing, which I found pretty funny. But her first introduction to the players here is through a cake making challenge that they have on every season of the circle so far. But they have to make a cake of Virginie, and she gets to pick the winner, and through that gets to have a private conversation with the winner. And she does end up picking Alea, who quickly brings Virginie into Team Winner. And through this, they pretty much run the game. At this point, they have 4 out of the 8 people solidly with them. And with the other 4 not fully being together, Team Winner pretty much runs the table. But we do also get the reveal that there's going to be a super influencer this round, which again happens on every season, where the top rated player gets to anonymously block someone, and this is the cliffhanger for the next episode. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention my favorite character moment, probably of the entire season, in this episode, where one of the twins doesn't know what a gynecologist is, despite pretending to be a woman. So that was kind of funny. But now up for episode 9, where we start off with the ratings, which were pretty by the numbers, with Team Winner now having, again, the numbers to do whatever they want. And Romain becomes a super influencer, and he pretty obviously blocks Ines, who, as I said, became a pretty clear target after what Gary said in his goodbye message. Though I do think without that, she probably would have been the most threatening player left anyway. And I really liked Ines. I mean, she kind of fits the mold of the Sammy or the Georgina or the Lorraines of the world, the type of people that I typically root for on the circle. And while again, I did like her, I just didn't find myself rooting for her as much as those other players. I think that that's largely due to the fact that I thought Romain and Maxime were both really likable, and in turn, I ended up rooting for the entire team of Team Winner by this endgame. And again, to see them strategically dominate a season of the circle was something that I've been waiting to see for a while now in the show. So because of that, I was rooting for Team Winner. But Ines was fun in her own right, even though, I think she made a lot of strategic missteps throughout the season. and was simply just outplayed by Team Winner at the end here. But after this, we do find out that the reveal of the results are actually going to be delayed until the next day, where the blocked player is going to be revealed to everyone through their goodbye video. We do see Nalia, Paolo, and Gabriel freaking out now, and we do then see Nalia, Paolo, and Gabriel aligning to take down Team Winner, as they should, and they talk about getting Virginie on their side, as at this point, she's the swing in the entire game. But then we get the nothing but the truth game, where the dynamics become even more clear, where Virginie openly states that she is sided with Team Winner. But we do get some drama from Nalia and Paolo going after Romain, and Paolo calling out Team Winner for using like flattery in their answers, which I found weird considering he proceeds to do the exact same thing in the next few questions, but whatever. He calls them hypocrites, which I can get that. I think almost everyone's a hypocrite within the circle, but Nalia and Paolo completely blow up their games here and make themselves clear targets moving forward. I will also say that I did find it disturbing that no one knew who Plato was, but whatever. After this, we do get Paolo trying to flip Virginie, but it's pretty clear that this is never going to work, when Paolo writes her like a massive novel, and she responds with okay, and then leaves the chat, which was the end of the episode. But now for episode 10, which starts off right away with the ratings and the reveal that the least popular player will be blocked instantly. And we see Team Winner targeting Paolo, so obviously Paolo is going home. But we did also see Paolo put Nalia in last, which I thought was pretty decent strategy on his end, though it doesn't end up working out for him, as unsurprisingly it comes down to Nalia and Paolo goes home. And I like Paolo on this season. I mean, he was a pretty scrappy underdog throughout most of his run. I think he had some really interesting strategic ideas and had pretty decent reads on the other players. I just think his execution of his plans were pretty flawed. I think he should have pretended more so to be on Team Winner, like pretend to them that he was with them while also plotting their demise. He made it too blatant that he was coming after them, and through that becomes the biggest target moving into this round. So I do think he played that poorly, but I was pretty disappointed to see him leave this early. Now for the rest of the episode, which has Paolo meeting Nalia and finding the twins, which I thought was pretty fun. And I think it's pretty clear here that there was a lot more flirting between the two that we weren't seeing, as it did feel weird that he would go and meet up with Nalia based on what we were shown. After this, we do get a message from Paolo where he throws a bit of mistrust into the game, and this does lead Nalia to try to throw Virginie under the bus to Team Winner, and it does seem like Romain actually does believe it, though Valeria or Maxime sees what's really going on here. We do get new profile pictures, and Nalia is the only one to not get any likes, making it clear that they are the next targets. And after this, we do get a challenge where the winner gets videos from home and can give one to another player. And with this, plus the fact that the challenge has rounds where the winner of the round has to eliminate two other players, that made it really fun. And I think this is the biggest amount of drama that we get from Team Winner, where Maxime accidentally wins round 2 and in turn has to eliminate one of his Team Winner alliance members and decides to eliminate Romain. In mixing that in with Alea also sharing her reward with Valeria, that makes Romain really worried about his position in the game. And we do get Nalia trying to flip Romain, and it seems to actually work for a little bit, but we do end the episode there. And for episode 11, we do start off with the ratings, which conclude with the final blocking before the finale. And at this point, Team Winner should have complete control of the game, but the repercussions from the previous game does leave some doubt, though during the actual ratings, it does seem like Romain is still on Team Winner. He does put Valeria in second. And during the next status updates, we do get Romain expressing his disappointment in his alliance, and I feel like Maxime responds to this pretty terribly. He doesn't even mention him in his update, and this further isolates Romain from Team Winner, which was just terrible right before the final blocking. But we get the ratings results, and the results are pretty by the numbers, with Romain and Alea becoming the influencers, and the show really tries to build up the drama of, is Romain going to eliminate Valeria? But it's like, I mean, that was never going to happen, was it? But we do get a funny montage of everyone opening a private chat with Alea, which obviously comes off as desperate to her. We then get the same final game from previous seasons of the show, where anonymously everyone can ask a question to the group, and it adds some last minute drama to the game. Romain does ask Valeria about her feelings for him, and Maxime does a pretty good job at responding to this and is able to get Romain back on her side. We do have Gabriel calling out Nalia, as obviously Nalia seems like the next target. Aaliyah does a public apology to the group, which I do think gains her the favor of team winner here. Alea and Virginie get in a fight after Alea points out that Virginie continuously brings up her job in conversations, leading to Maxime further calling her out, and Virginie just really blows up her game here for no real reason. And by the end of this, it looks like Nalia is off the hook, while Romain wants to get Gabriel out and Alea wants to get Virginie out. And we do get some debate between the two, but I feel like it was pretty clear that Virginie was going to be blocked here with, again, how much she just blew up her game. And then we end the episode with the reveal that they will have a face-to-face meeting. But let's talk about Virginie, and she was fine. She wasn't in the game for long, and she didn't have that much to really do. She did have some strategic moments, but really she just ended up being the kingmaker for Team Winner. Where if she really wanted to, she could have gave the Rebellion the numbers to take out Team Winner, but she didn't. She sided with Team Winner, so yeah. Again, I never really connected to her as a character. She wasn't really there for long enough. And really, just overall, there isn't really that much to say about her. But now for the finale. And this was a pretty interesting Final Five. For the first time ever, we had more than one catfish in the finale. And actually, the majority of the people here were catfish. So that was really interesting. We did get the final ratings, and it did seem like Team Winner voted genuinely. They legitimately voted for one of themselves to win, which should have guaranteed one of them to win 100%. We'll talk about the rule change later. And we get the face-to-face reveal, which is probably one of the best in the entire series so far. I mean, obviously Season 1 UK is a really iconic meeting, but I do feel like this one is consistently great from beginning to end. And a lot of it comes from the fact that we have 3 catfish reveals. I mean, we get Romain entering, and he gets to meet Valeria or Maxime, and unlike that one moment from UK Season 1, we don't see any hostility here. Both Maxime and Romain just laugh their asses off, and obviously Romain is probably hurt. Obviously I think that is probably a factor here, but it was nice to see him just not take it personally. I mean, he was just laughing the entire time. And to me, that made this scene really fun to watch. We then get some fun reactions from Alea entering, and then Gabriel's entrance is really fun here too, where he doesn't initially reveal who he is and gets distracted by being shocked by the Valeria reveal, but eventually we get Nalia entering and we have the one twin come in, and people are just shocked by that naturally, obviously, but then we have the other twin come in just randomly in the middle of the dinner, and I thought that was pretty fun as well. After this, we do get the reunion, which unlike previous seasons had no host, and it felt like a more genuine reunion. It felt like the players were all meeting for the first time after the game. I mean, we could literally see people being surprised at some catfish reveals. So I thought this was fun. I think this was the best way to structure the finale. I mean, this is something that you can only do on these Netflix versions. As with the Circle UK, it's being filmed live. It's a longer season. It's tougher to keep these people in sequester for as long as what they would need to do. So I understand that if they don't do it for the UK versions, but I do think for the US and Brazil versions, I think this is a better way of handling the reunion here. But something that I am pretty mixed on is the reveal that not just the final ratings of the current players will be included in the results, but also the ratings of the last 3 eliminated players from the game. Essentially all the players that were there from the point where no new players were entering the game. And there's a couple things I have to mention about this. I think one, it minimizes the chance of strategic finale voting, leading to an underwhelming outcome. That's happened in previous seasons. I mean, you're not going to have someone win strictly because they're the least popular person out of the final 5, and because they are the least popular, they're boosted by that rating and end up winning. I mean, this has happened in previous versions, so I understand why they would want to stop that. They want to have a more genuine winner, a winner that was truly the most popular. But I do also think that this favors the underdogs over people who actively controlled the game. I mean, I think this definitely doesn't benefit Team Winner at the end of the day, and I also don't love how it wasn't told to the players until the results were about to be revealed. And I do think it changed the results as well. I mean, I do think, based on the players that were left in the game, I think Alea 100% wins the game naturally. But because of these new rules, I do think Alea was harmed by the people that left the game, with Virginie and Ness probably rating her decently low. And through that, we get a Romain win instead, which was still satisfying. Again, anyone from Team Winner for me would have been a great conclusion. I think Romain is probably the best character of the season. But I do think Alea probably played a better game overall than he did. But still, a Romain win was still a lot of fun and a great way to end this season. But that's it for the actual season itself, so let's start talking about the final 5, starting off with Valeria or Maxime. I mean, he was obviously great on this season. I mean, he came in as this really stoic, strategic player, and while he did play that way the entire way through, I do think he showed a lot more of his personality as the season went on. I think he opened up as a character. His interactions with Romain were really fun. That final dinner scene is just fantastic, probably my favorite moment of the entire season. And then also, I think he's quite possibly the person who played the most optimally in the history of the Circle. I mean, it's between him and a player from Season 2 of the UK, and I think he's up there as probably the best Circle player ever, as of right now, at least in terms of getting themselves to the end. Now for Nalia or the twins, and they were really fun characters as well, with them being really confrontational and having to scrape themselves out of holes that they would put themselves in. But they had a lot of fun reactions, fun interactions, and I did end up liking them a lot more than like Luna from the Circle Brazil, which was a very similar character. But I felt like Nalia was a lot more entertaining to watch. Now for Gabriel, who was fine. I mean, out of the final 5 here, he was probably my least favorite character. And outside of him playing the middle for most of the game, I don't feel like I know much about him. Though I will say that outside of Team Winner, I do think he probably played the best strategically and was able to not get on Team Winner's bad side, which in turn allowed him to get to the end of the game. And then also apparently he had a strong relationship with Leia that kept him around as well. So while he's not the best character, I do think of him as a pretty solid player. Now for Alea, and again, I do think she would have been the winner if the finale had played out like the previous versions, and I do think she actively optimized her chances of winning at the end by getting Gabriel to the end over Virginie. And we see that with Gabriel rating Alea first, but overall, I found her to be a fine character. I mean, not a really dynamic one like Maxime or Romain, but a more relatable one, a more grounded one, and one I did find pretty likable by the end of the season. And now for Romain, who I loved right from the beginning. I mean, he was a really fun character the entire way through. He had really funny reactions. I mean, he had great interactions with a lot of the other players. I do think he had a bevy of strategic missteps. I don't think he wins with the previous format of the game, and I also think he had some pretty poor reads on the game at points, but I did still find his win satisfying, probably outside of the Circle US Season 1. I think this is probably the most satisfying conclusion in the history of the show. So while I don't necessarily love how he won, I do think his win was a great capper to this season. So overall, I love the Circle France. I think the production team has now had the time to work out the kinks from the previous versions, and mixing that in with a mostly strategic cast, or at least one that knew that they were playing a game, I think that they brought us the best season so far. I think the pacing was tighter, the casting was better, or at least more consistent for me. And this is easily the best season of the show so far. I think this is the first season of the show that has truly lived up to the potential that I always believed that this show had. So those are my opinions on the Circle France. I'm finally caught up on the Circle up to this point, and I would like to do a couple Circle videos that I've been wanting to do for a while now. So stay tuned for those, but for now, that's the video. Thank you for watching.